Officer at Westminster College in Pennsylvania. That building you see there is my home base. That's McGill Library. And that's pretty much what it looks like today. Hope everybody out there is safe and warm. I have the honestly unreal privilege of serving as chair of ACRL's New Roles and Changing Landscapes Committee. For those of you who are unfamiliar with New Roles, as we call it, because that's a real long title, we are the committee charged with developing initiatives related to ACRL's goal to foster change in libraries and in higher education generally. So today's presentation actually grew out of our committee small talk at the beginning of each of our meetings since back in the spring about how we're coping with the pandemic as librarians, how we're changing our library services and practices in order to meet our users' needs, both old and the new ones that popped up. Our presenters today are members and guests of the New Roles committees, and they're reflective of the wide range of academic libraries and library workers. And the solutions they'll describe today are also reflective of those differences, of their roles, their locations, their resources, their institutions. Now, throughout the talk, please use the chat to ask questions or offer your own stories, and we'll save time at the end to discuss them. Because while we hope you'll walk away, or I guess I should say log off, from this webinar with some concrete ideas to implement new things at your libraries, what we really hope is that you'll spend some time patting yourself on the back for the amazing work you and your colleagues have been doing at your libraries since last spring, and perhaps identifying those things that you would like to keep doing. And so, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our first speaker for this lightning round presentation, Adoria Williams.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Adoria Williams from Merritt College in Oakland, California, part of the Peralta Community College District. So I'm going to talk about the impact that COVID had on my particular institution, the changes that we went through. There were several. In particular, our role as librarians expanded. We became distance education rock stars, and library instruction became a really hot commodity. Now, I want you to keep in mind that our staff is very small. There are only 2 full-time librarians, including myself, and we have 7 adjunct librarians. So we were immediately put to the test with our staffing. So talking about our expanded role, we became more vital and visible than ever. Virtual reference was not just about providing reference anymore. It became much bigger. So we had to creatively begin developing enhanced learning methods, not just for students, but for faculty as well, because we had to get them over the learning curve of not knowing how to use Canvas. We helped stem the chaos and to maintain quality control for instructors and students alike. So like I said, we became the DE rock stars. It is obviously something that our faculty had to learn about. Many of our courses were not online at the time, so the transition was difficult for several. But our game was strong because we have been hosting library and information science courses online for about 10 years now. And we were pulled in to start training faculty on how to go online. I, in particular, was part of the distance education committee at both the district level and the college level. And I became the tech assist person, the go-to person for faculty to contact during specified office hours for assistance on creating their online courses and actually learning the basics of how to communicate with their students online. We were no longer an afterthought. Sometimes the library is sort of the stepchild. We're kind of pushed to the back and thought of as you know, not as valuable as we really are, but all of a sudden we became valuable, and we began building better connections, stronger connections across disciplines, and we feel like we have a permanent seat at the table now. So as I said before, library instruction also became in demand. I personally teach a course called LIS 85, Introduction to Information Resources, and we have non-credit certificate program courses as well. And we just immediately began throwing ourselves out there for students and faculty alike. We began embedding in classes more, where we would have live or recorded orientations and workshops, and we worked hand in hand with everyone to make sure that the transition to online learning was a success. We found that working with small groups worked quite well, and we were able to provide students with instruction and technology to support their digital literacy. We continue to support the faculty and students by developing course content, co-teaching, offering research consultation, and holding virtual reference hours 6 days a week, and assisting in identifying and linking of course content. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Beth Filar Williams, and I'm going to be talking about partnerships. I'm at OSU, Oregon State University in Corvallis. It's about 2 hours south of Portland. We're somewhere around 30,000 some FTE, about 20,000 normally on site. But since the pandemic, we're at 10% instruction on site. This is a picture of the Valley Library, the main library, the one library on campus. We have a small branch in the coast an hour away and another over the Cascades in Bend. But we are the largest building on campus, the busiest, and open the most hours during normal times. Yet we actually, it's hard to compare to Adoria's library, but we are actually, according to our peers, we are the smallest staffing of any of our peer libraries. We're maybe about 90,000 faculty and staff, 120 student employees. We're really student focused. We rely on our student employees a ton, and we really wanted to keep them employed during the pandemic, which was another reason why these partnerships helped. We're normally open 24/5, or were before the pandemic. When it hit in the spring, we closed spring and summer, and in the fall, we're a quarter school, and fall and winter, we've been open 10 to 5, Monday through Friday for reservations only. So we went from anywhere from 3,000 users a day at our highest to like 55 to 85 with the reservations. But we have robust reference services remote as well. So to talk about the partnerships, I have to tell you about the Human Services Resource Center. Part of their mission statement says they humanize students marginalized by inequity, poverty, and oppression. And they've been around a few years now. They are student fee based. It rose up from the students, and student government voted it in, and they pay for it. And it helps with food pantry, emergency housing, textbook lending. So the philosophy before COVID was a little bit more, the library is focused on immediate needs. You know, people come in the library, what do you need? We serve all students. We don't really ask questions. We want to help you. But the HSRC is more for long-term needs, long-term loans of textbooks or laptops, and they focus on students in need. We often sent students their way, we referred often, and we helped them get their textbook lending program going in ALMA to make it work more efficiently. They worked with our IT on campus to get laptops out. So when the pandemic hit, these existing relationships really helped make things easier. You know, we're stretched in a crisis or stretched too thin. We could take those values we all kind of support, like you can see in our OSU strategic plan, and support these students. So I got together on the phone or Zoom immediately with Nicole Hines, the head of HSRC, and we kind of said, okay, so what are we going to do to support these students? They're going to need more help, right? And I still remember her saying, 10% of the students are HSRC students, but now they all are, because they're all in a situation that's not what they expected, and they have needs that are not what they had, you know, issues that they had before. So I'll start with course materials because that's one thing that we really connected on originally. So it's spring, OSU is pretty much shut down. They're telling students to go home. There's only a small bit on campus. We do all our reserves physically, and so does HSRC. So that's making it kind of hard to get them out. Quarantine time, mailing them to students, whatever. It just doesn't make the most sense to help the most students that need it now. So we thought about what skills we had. They do intake. They collect like, what do you need? That's their skill. We could put a form on their site and send students their way in order to find out what their needs are, from course materials to laptops to other things. Hopefully they would discover other things HSRC could do for them in the process as well. We, the library, were allowed some essential staff on site from day one. So we were close to the public and the building was closed, but we were there for returns, and we have a loading dock, which is critical. Some other entities like IT and HSRC do not. So we were still receiving and things were being dropped off. So we are also set up to do scanning. We have scanners throughout the library, so we could spread them out from the public scanners and let our 30 student employees in my unit stay employed by helping scan for course and reserve materials, as well as help look for ebooks, because we did that first. Try to get an ebook, try to get a physical book, and then scan for course and reserve materials. So we've reworked this process over time. In the spring it was Box. In the fall, we worked with General Counsel to get controlled digital lending going in ALMA, trying to find different ways to do intake. I think the key takeaways here are that we are now doing digital reserves, something we want to continue, and the student-driven requests were really critical. We did not have student-driven requests before. The other thing I want to share is the laptops. So the library is mainly short-term laptops. Most of ours are just for a few hours a day, maybe a week. But again, going back to that loading dock and students needing these resources, we were grateful that IT came into play from campus. They found some laptops to refurbish. We used some gift funds. We piled our resources together to support the students that needed this. And the library took it on to mail them out. Even outside of my unit, other units in my library helped with pulling this together in order to send these to students that needed them. And at the same time, we're now shifting. All laptops are long-term laptops. We kept renewing them if the students needed them. And we started eliminating fines during the process. So to kind of conclude, this relationship really of trust helped us pivot and move forward together. We had that trust built from campus. We could provide less confusion for students by sending them to one place. Now students are learning more about what we do, what HSRC does, hopefully through this process. And we're learning too, cross-departmentally, like internally in the library, we're learning a bit about what everybody does a little better, as well as across campus from IT to HSRC, sort of connecting, even the bookstore and faculty are learning more. And I think the big thing is the input from students is now helping us see like, oh, this course, so many students need it. Like maybe we need to be working more on OER, low cost, no cost, ebooks, like other ways to provide it, as well as digital course materials to make it more accessible to more people. So in conclusion, we're hoping that we can find opportunities to continue as strong partners for when the next crisis may hit us.
Hi, my name is Erika Watson, and I'm the Electronic Services Librarian at Contra Costa College. We're a small college in San Pablo, California, that is north of Oakland, in the East Bay, in the Bay Area. We have 2 full-time librarians. I'm one of them, a couple techs, and a big pool of part-time librarians. We hit the ground running when we went into lockdown, and since we are a small college with not much of a budget, I had to figure out how to do things very cheaply and pretty much free. So some things that we did, was we changed our LibCal appointments from study rooms to Zoom reference and scanning appointments. Starting in the fall, we are allowing students to come in to scan our reserves because we do not have any budget to make them e-reserves. We also created a virtual toolkit for all the librarians working remotely So all the paper, all the handouts, all the MLA handouts and the APA handouts and all these things are now in a SharePoint for all of our librarians to be able to access. We had some librarians who were doing some off-desk hours, a big weeding project, which obviously came to a screaming halt. So we didn't want them to lose those hours because we were afraid we wouldn't be able to get them back. So so for example, the one that was doing some of the collection development made all of our forms PDFs, and so we could not just photocopy them, that they were available in this toolkit that we made. We also took the librarians who had off desk to we signed everybody, departments, to reach out to help particular faculty. We have a lot of different programs like EMT and nursing and automotive, as well as your more standard 2-year. Sorry, there was a huge crash just now. As well as transfer. And so we had the librarians reach out to see if they could assist, and also the instruction librarian that is part-time made how-to videos in Screencast-O-Matic, which is free, and Canvas Studio, which is included in Canvas, of one-shots, so that the instructors could still have those available to students. One thing that we also used, which we're going to definitely keep, is Google Voice. We started using it because our reference phone line isn't connected to an email. Therefore, we couldn't manage it except on campus. So we set up a Gmail account and we attached it to my cell phone for now. It's very funny, right? Because it is ringing at this moment. Somebody else is going to get it. And it has a really nice interface. And you can archive the calls, you can archive the messages. And since we weren't seeing each other in between shifts and saying, oh, so-and-so called and such this or whatever, it's a nice way to be able to go back to see what happened in people's shifts, and also to keep a record. This was very important at the beginning of the semesters, because the librarian is the contact for all the semester-long technology checkouts. So it was very helpful for us who actually were on campus to be able to look back and see, oh, they did call. Okay, well, I better, contact them. There are some pros and cons to Google Voice. Pro, it's free. I personally like the computer interface. I think that all the librarians who have been using it, I haven't had a lot of questions about how to maneuver around the interface. It archives the conversations, and we can text them, which has been by far the most popular way that students want to contact us. Some of the cons: it's attached to my phone number, my personal phone number. It also has a lot of settings that if you have to mess with, because sometimes it won't ring on your computer, and if you have headset on, it sometimes won't work, and things like that. But just getting really familiar with it. I couldn't do a proper training because I was learning it as we were going, so it was a little rocky, but it has definitely been incredibly helpful. And of course, if you have a Gmail account, sometimes if there are a lot of different logins from a lot of different devices, it'll say no thank you. So that was a bit of a growing pain as well. But I think once we are back in person, we will continue this because it is a good tool. And since we're 2-year, these students are only going to know this phone number. They're not going to know the reference phone number. So yeah, so that's my 2 cents on Google Voice. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Theresa Westbrook. I'm the Dean of Library Services at the University of Northern Iowa. The University of Northern Iowa is a regional public comprehensive university located in the Cedar Valley of northeastern Iowa. We have about 9,500 FTE students, and about 88% of those students are undergraduate students. UNI's Rod Library is located at the center of campus and is a hub for library activity, tutoring, and academic support, digital media, faculty professional development, and the UNI Museum. We have 44 full-time employees at the library, comprising both faculty and staff, and 48 student employees. After closing our buildings in March on campus, our campus and library fully reopened on August 3rd, 2020, and in fall and spring semester, we have offered over 70% of our courses face-to-face, fully face-to-face. On March 11th, 2020, university administrators made the decision to move all classes to an online format after spring break. This is something you are all familiar with at this point in time. And that meant that our students would not return to campus after leaving for break on Friday, March 13th. By Monday, March 16th at noon, the first day of spring break, the library then closed its doors to the public. By 3 o'clock that day, we had a curbside pickup service in place to complement our array of remote services for our patrons. In this short presentation, I will outline our experience with curbside pickup, but I also want to touch briefly on a few more initiatives that were positively impacted by our experiences since March 2020. I want to acknowledge that while I am the one reporting on these projects, they were all initiated, planned, and carried out by our amazing team at Rod Library. So first, curbside pickup on April 7th. Due to this is our stats of curbside since we closed our doors originally in March 2020, and on April 7th, due to changes in health protocols, we closed down all physical services, including curbside pickup. So you'll see a period of time there where we didn't have any curbside. And I just realized that I have some bad dates on there. I'll update those slides. So we were able to reinstate it 4 weeks later and resumed operations on May 13th, 2020. And so while the requests have certainly decreased since the library building reopened in August, the pickup procedures are not burdensome for staff and continue to be of extremely high value to those who use the service and for those who are still not physically coming to the library building. While the curbside services are ubiquitous and expected now across industries, that certainly wasn't the case a year ago. With a working request system already in place, adding a curbside option was relatively straightforward. Patrons use the request feature in our online catalog or by calling our access services desk. Once the materials are ready to be picked up, patrons receive an email indicating as much, and then they are directed to call the service desk when they are on their way to pick up the items. Until that point, the request process is the same as it always has been. When a patron calls and indicates curbside pickup preference, the materials are transferred to the pickup tote, and then patrons park in the designated spot and retrieve their items from the tote. So it's a pretty straightforward, simple, not technologically complicated procedure. So while this process was relatively simple to implement, there are a few considerations for a successful curbside pickup program. So the first thing I'll recommend is to be flexible in how you receive requests. So one can initiate a curbside pickup request, obviously through the request feature on the online catalog, but we can also take those requests via phone call or via chat in any way that you would normally contact the library. Number two, make sure you have a curb. So this can be complicated at campuses that are that have less kind of parking and a higher value on square footage. So our campus is relatively spread out, and we have parking pretty close to the library building. We negotiated with our facilities department for designated parking and then built our exchange point around those parking spots. Be clear with your signage, be redundant with signage. Patrons are asked to call ahead before they come and pick up their items. But be sure that if they don't call ahead or they don't follow instructions exactly as you've intended them to, that they can figure out what to do when they get there. Something to remember is that everyone is doing pickup services, and there are a lot of different procedures for people to keep track of depending on what they're picking up and where. And last, don't forget to consider how your program will be affected by bad weather. I think this is something that we're all reminded of, in the past few days, kind of no matter where we live, that the weather can definitely impact services. And for an outdoor service exchange point, this is a really important consideration. I want to note a few more things that we'll keep doing here at Rod Library, or that we'll keep working on, that were influenced by our experiences during COVID. So over the course of the past year, we have learned that a lot of our work can be done remotely, especially temporarily. This realization has relaxed a long-standing culture of on-campus work, even in exceptional circumstances. Specifically, we are able to offer temporary work location flexibility to our staff colleagues in ways that are equitable with the flexibility that is inherent in faculty schedules. We are using this flexibility to accommodate our staff during weather closures and other reduced operations periods. We also expanded due dates, suspended fines, and offered broad flexibility while campus was in flux during the initial COVID closure. Upon our return to relatively normal operations in August, we immediately began a review of our checkout and fines policies and are now moving in the direction of removing fines for items in regular circulation. In order to create opportunities for informal interaction during COVID, a colleague began scheduling tea times, which was open to all library employees. She had a few icebreaker questions to spur conversation, and if there were a lot of attendees, she managed breakout sessions. As we returned to normal operations, we realized that continuing these tea times is important and fun. Now we schedule monthly tea times with a volunteer host who establishes a loose theme for discussion. In fact, we have one scheduled this afternoon. So this afternoon, we'll be having a foodie tea time where we'll share favorite recipes, meals, restaurants, and food stories. It's just a good time to get together informally and to kind of intentionally socialize together. That is something that has been removed as we've moved to various work locations. Again, none of this would have been possible without a creative and dedicated team. And thank you for listening to our ideas.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Dye-Reeves, and I am the History and College of Education librarian at Texas Tech University. And today I want to talk to you about creating a graduate support center, which is also known currently as the Doctoral Support Center for the College of Education during the pandemic. This picture that you see on the screen in front of you is the College of Education building. And our next slide, I'm talking a little bit about the Graduate Support Center. Here's some information about Texas Tech University. We're located in Lubbock, Texas. And here's some information about our College of Education. So we really do have so many different, doctoral programs and degrees, and how many people that we retain over a period of time. But the first thing that I want to talk about with you all today is how we created this doctoral program, how it got started, and what media we've really chosen to use with video modules. So in December of 2019, I was selected to join the Doctoral Support Center by all the deans within the College of Education as their dedicated liaison. So the goal was to create a center that met the needs of the students holistically during the entirety of their programs, especially their doctoral programs, because we saw in student surveys that often they were dissatisfied and they felt really disconnected with everyone else in the program. So they wanted a physical space so we could have to, just talk informally, have resources for them that's available through the library, the writing center, or if they would need that through our Red Raider Pantry. And that's really helps with the food insecurities, and even talking about just a program to be able to have a writing center dedicated for them, because there's a lot of really difficult times for them in terms of writing differences. We saw that with our international students. And so we also wanted just to create something that grew a community. So ultimately at first we were creating this physical space and we had this all laid out in our minds. We had an idea of where it would be within the building, but then the pandemic started and we had to go quickly from a really physical to a digital space. And so with that in mind, we had to think, okay, so how are we going to go from the physical space to a digital space? And I really had the idea of working with creating a video modules. So in February 2020, the center had to really shift focus to a virtual space because of the pandemic. And so what I really wanted to do was continue to work with these partnerships with our Red Raider Pantry, with our Graduate Writing Center, and works with some other partnerships on campus just to be able to provide students with what they need. So beginning with that, I decided to have a proposal for the Graduate Support Center. Let's start with thinking about where they are, even when they're first starting the program and where they are going to end up, even using this as a recruitment tool. So we could start with the modules of, hey, this is the application process. This is what things are going to look like during, your first year as a doctoral student and going all the way through the dissertation process. So that is really, working with these modules, there was so many ways and really there's so many technologies out there too. So we ultimately decided to use MediaSite. And in the next slide, you can see that we chose MediaSite because we had a site license for it here at Texas Tech University. And so what I did was create these videos through MediaSite, and that was really helping us, incorporate these modules easy with our website design for the College of Education within their website. And we have someone over there who is our website master in the College of Ed who's putting all of this together. So this is just kind of a interface screen of what MediaSite looks like. In our next slide that we can see some of the options. And what I like about the options is that if we were to do this live, we could do a Q&A forum like later on if students had questions within the hour, we could do that. What I like so about MediaSite is in the next slide, you can see that we have a spot for auto transcriptions. So I was able to work with our reference and instruction and outreach group that I'm a part of within the university library system. And we have some great graduate students who helped me with the closed captioning. So I'm really thankful to them, and Publish to Go. So that way, I was ready to have all the transcription right there and ready and put it on the website when we needed it. So in the next slide, we can see some more information. I don't have a lot of statistics on it yet, and that's just because I'm going to talk in the next slide a little bit about why that is. In our future casting, this is our logo for our doctoral support program. I'm really excited because we just have this logo as of last week. And this is our College of Education website. And so we are going to launch this particular website. We were supposed to have launched that this week, but due to the snowstorms that we're having here in Texas, we're unable to do that at the moment. And so with our future is we're hoping that students will have a place where they can have all the information on our doctoral programs all at one time and really going from the beginning to the end of the program. And that way they're feeling great about where they are and what their resources are. And, even during the pandemic, one of the things that we talked about so much is just providing community and them having a community that they feel a part of. And we feel that with this doctoral support, we're able to do that. So I'm really excited to be with you here today. And thank you so much for listening. Back to Erin.
Thanks, everybody. Aren't these people amazing? I mean, I just cannot be more lucky to get to work with these folks on this committee. And I am going to turn it over to Erin Nebius at ACRL. We've had a very active chat. Just want to love it. And so if you have questions that haven't been answered, let us know. And I think Erin will walk us through some that maybe they haven't been answered in the chat yet, or if we just want to share the chat answer with the whole group.
Hi, yes, thank you everyone. That was great. I am going to recover some ground just because the chat has been so interesting. So I'll just do this in the order of presentations and start with Adoria. So could you talk a little bit more about the non-credit certificate courses, what they provide, and how are students encouraged to take them?
Yes, the non-credit certificate program, actually many disciplines in our system have non-credit classes, but these are free courses that we offer to students. After 6 hours of study, they can get a certificate of completion. These are primarily for students who don't want to take our long-term LIS course, which is, our LIS course is actually a late start short-term course. It's only 8 weeks in length, but it's 2 units long, and that's fully transferable to the state system and to the UC system. It's so, and I pack a lot in those 8 weeks. So the certificate program is for those students who, don't want to spend 8 weeks in a course because maybe they have a full load or whatever already. So that program, the certificate program, is separated into 3 different classes, 2 hours long. And, in the first class, you might learn the basics of information literacy, how to actually, formulate a research topic question and get started on your research. The next class, you're learning how to access the different databases and figure out the differences between an ebook and, a periodical article, and what is a periodical, and then the third session might be how to avoid plagiarism, how to actually cite your sources. So we do that over 6 hours, and then the students get a certificate, and it's all in Canvas, of course.
Fantastic, thank you. And one more for you, Adoria. What tech tools were you helping faculty with?
Anything that our librarians knew about. Turns out our college has, hundreds of tech tools available for as resources in Canvas, and most people don't know how to use many of them. So there's a handful that librarians knew how to use, the basics such as Flipgrid and Turnitin and things like that. So we were helping faculty learn how to use those within their Canvas classroom, how to set up a Flipgrid and maybe use that as for introductions in the orientation module, things like that.
That is great. Thank you so much. All right, Beth, could you talk more about student-driven support? How does it work?
Oh, thanks. I saw that question, and I'm assuming support, I assume it's related to when I mentioned the course reserves promoted by students, right? So in the past, our course reserves were just driven by instructors submitting requests for materials to be on course reserve. We didn't take them from students. I don't know why, it just wasn't there. We also didn't have the digital reserves. So when the pandemic happened, we were getting on chat and things right away asking about course reserve materials. So we realized, students are asking, faculty, not to say faculty weren't thinking about their students' needs, but faculty are scrambling. We were a quarter school, right? So when the pandemic hit in the 3rd week in March, we closed, it was our exam week. We had a week off of spring break, and then our spring term started and ran to mid-June. So we were hitting a whole term with what are we gonna do? Faculty all of a sudden are now like, okay, I have to teach online and I have a week to figure it out. So, I mean, I know others were in the same situation. So student driven, meaning that instead of trying to wait on the instructors to figure out, this was a whole new thing, right? They're not just on campus like they normally are and whatnot. So we decided that we would take input from students asking for course materials. So when they came in through chat or they emailed circulation, and we were trying to send them through the HSRC form, but we actually took input from them in other means if that's the way it came, but trying to push them through the form so that they could find out more about other resources. When they went through the form, they could find out that there's food bags they could get, there's other materials they might not have known they need, like a calculator that we will send them or things like that. So student driven in the sense that they put in, I'm in this class, I was, they're probably expecting to have a physical material. You also have to keep in mind when this all happened, remember back in the spring, there was a lot of supply chain issues. So even though HSRC thought, well, we could just buy this book for this needy student and have it sent to them, they literally couldn't. It was hard to get the materials. So some of that, taking all of that in mind, we were like, okay, so students can request it. They have course materials physically at HSRC. We have stuff here. How can we get things that students are asking scanned? Well, try to buy an ebook if there's one available. If there's not, how can we get a physical book or a book we own and get it scanned and get it to the students? So we tried different means. There was a lot of people and a lot of cooks in the kitchen to try to figure this out behind the scenes. I'm just the department head. So, me, I just run meetings and don't actually do any work. I'm just kidding. But making sure that the hands in the process of it, sometimes it was students asking and us telling the instructors, hey, here's this thing for your class that you can tell your students about, but then learning that that often didn't get passed down. So then we were also just telling students, okay, here it is in box. So that's why when we got to the fall with controlled digital lending and it's in ALMA, which is our system that we use through Ex Libris, we were able to get that in there. So like students in the past would search in our course reserves module in ALMA and find out what physical course reserves we had and come to the desk to get it. Now they search and they can see it in there. They log in and they have access to a chapter at a time, one person per view to access that material. So it's now kind of driven by students in the sense of what are students' needs. We're now seeing like a whole bunch of them are asking for this class or that class. So maybe it's going to help us. Our hope is down the road as we're looking to affordability issues on campus, where we have a strong open campus OER stuff going on campus too, but this can maybe really help us figure out where are there strong needs to move toward more low cost, no cost textbooks. Like maybe this will help us down the road, knowing that these are classes that the students are struggling to get the materials. I mean, we all know a lot of retention issues have to do with students not being able to purchase the materials for the class, so they skip the class, things like that. So that's a really big focus we're hoping to like really launch forward, not through how controlled digital lending will work in the future with copyright, but with during the pandemic, we're still going this route. I hope that answered the question well enough.
That was great. Thank you, thank you, Erin. That's me. Thank you, Beth. I have a couple more questions for you. Could you talk a bit more about the HSRC partnership related to food?
Right. So I know I mentioned partnership with them with food, but it's not like we're really necessarily doing food related things, but we're using that, we're referring to them. We're really big advocates of their services. We have stuff at our CERC desks and things like that, just in general. We have materials, we push it out. We often, you know the students, when you're in public services, access services, you get to know the people that are more regulars, that are in and out. You get to see some patterns. Like we notice when students, like in our 24/5, like a student that seemed to be sleeping there every night, maybe doesn't have a home, is trying to make it through. So can we connect them with HSRC, who can help them a bit with getting money, they have lots of little bits of emergency funds. They could maybe get the student to help them out a little bit. If nothing else, get some money on their card so they can buy food on campus, things like that. But just in general, we tour their facility, we help them get their textbooks up. They do a phenomenal amount of work getting like food from the kitchens on campus, like at the end of a lunch period. They sometimes get some of those leftovers there for students, and they do cooking classes and all sorts of things. So we make sure we know what they have available. We do food drives sometimes that relate directly to them and help them out a bit. So it's more of that kind of a relationship. So if you don't have something like that on campus, it's definitely worth learning more about how. And ours was totally student driven. The students felt this need. It rose up from the students and they support it through student fees. So it's a fabulous opportunity to connect. I hope that helps enough. I just think it's kind of knowing about it and referring to it and making sure the students know about the resources they can get.
Great, thank you. And one more, I'm going to go back to the student-driven support. A question just came in. I'm trying to understand the distinction between e-reserves and controlled digital lending. In both cases, the library scans the material, right? But e-reserves or print reserves are requested by the instructor, while CDL is requested by students and limited to one reader at a time.
Right. Well, to be clear, we did physical only until COVID hit. So we didn't have anything like e-reserves or controlled digital lending. We had none of that. So we just had physical books that people borrowed. So when the pandemic hit and we couldn't lend those, we were looking at how we could do something how we could do something electronic, because you can't physically send a book and get it back and then quarantine it, and you're going to get like one person using it up in 2 weeks or something, right? Whereas we had 6-hour checkouts before, where someone could borrow it for 6 hours and then someone else could get it. So the electronic or digital reserves more in the general idea of something electronic versus something physical. But in the electronic reserve idea, digital reserves, controlled digital lending is like a method that we were tackling. And I did think I said this in the chat. So if you want to see it, I did share Sagan Wallace, who is a faculty member in my unit, who really did a lot of the work, most of the work on this. They will be presenting at Design for Digital in February 23rd on exactly CDL at OSU. So if you're interested in that, I would really say listen to their presentation. They're going to do a great job. But I also shared the open source, the Google Doc, that I think might help you understand that better. So we looked at the copyright compliance, like kind of what should be the principles of it, using some white papers that were out there from some others. You can look at the document to learn more, and kind of went through that and talked to our general counsel and kind of tried to figure out how we could do this in the best way that's copyright compliant in our system in ALMA, figured out how to use ALMA to do the controlled digital lending, and to keep with the copyright issues, allowing one person to access it at a time. Now, granted, we are talking about what can we do? What's a better way to do this? How do we bring in fair use? How do we work better holistically after the pandemic to continue this? So we're going to be having a lot of conversations soon about this. We're also lucky because we have a great bookstore at OSU. They are a nonprofit, one of the few in the country. They still need to make money, but they work with us. They support us in that way and they're willing to work with us again to help find more ebooks and other digital course materials for the future. I hope that helped a little bit more.
Thank you, Beth. That was great. And you actually answered the second part of the question. So, all right, this next question is for Erika, but I would like to open it up to all panelists because I think you probably all have interesting things to say about it. What type of how-to videos do you make, and what kind of video tutorials are getting the most use?
I'll start. What videos aren't we making is really what we should be asking. Because I am a DE support specialist at campus as well as electronic services, we started out as, this is how you fill out the technology request form, to now I have made, how do you log into your email? How do you forward your your school email to your personal? So, I mean, that it's pretty much if it's a question, we're creating a video for it. But as far as library related, we have had the how to log into the Chromebook that we are checking out, because of course it's not easy, and how to request materials because we are lending physical materials now, and how to maneuver around databases. Those are ours.
I would say mine is just a little bit different because I am working with the College of Education and now the Department of History. Mine pretty much is an introduction to the resources that we have, ones that are specifically to education. So it's how to create a research question, but then it's what kind of resources are out there for education, but also working with the dissertation process, because a lot of them are very like, oh, how do I get started with a dissertation? They ask me this really big thing and I don't know what to do. And what resources do we have? So a lot of my videos are based on that, and especially within our graduate and our doctoral support center. And I think when we're looking at video tutorials and what technologies to use, because there is so many out there, we had that question of, okay, can Camtasia? You know, can we use another product? Can we use looking at iSpring Suite, if you've ever used that before? And so there's all these different ones, but we were pretty much had to use MediaSite because we had a site license for that. And that's where we had to stick with it. And that's what I use for all my videos now, for all my workshops that I do within the university library system, and just these video tutorials. And I like it because it also has the auto transcription. And so I'm able to work with our graduate students and they can help me put that in there so we can be ADA compliant.
We copied Erika and Contra Costa College and just launched our YouTube channel. And so we have helpful videos on that YouTube channel right now, you know, such as, you know, how to use our databases, how to use the LibGuides, things like that. And instructors know that we are launching this channel, and they can take those videos and import them into their Canvas classrooms so that their students can use them as well. And I have, since the pandemic hit, I have made videos myself just at the request of faculty and sent them to them for individualized usage. So there's a lot of that. You know, creativity has really been sparked as a result of COVID. I mean, we're doing things that we never thought we would do before. So
I'm not sure the moderator is allowed to jump in, but one of the things that I found interesting, so we were just like, I think it was Adoria that mentioned, like, we were primarily residential. Most of our classes were in person, small liberal arts, you know, kind of that model. So we've made videos all along for kind of all of our groups, but it's the faculty that have really, because of the pandemic, like those views on our faculty videos have just gone through the roof in a way that, you know, we found it totally makes sense. But I mean, the numbers are really surprising how many more views we're getting on those things now than we did pre-pandemic.
Another new question just came in through the chat. It's kind of broad, he says, but how have you become more embedded in your campus LMSs?
Any faculty can request a librarian. That's how we have it. There are obviously, like, we have it's called English 1A, and it's an extended class. So that's where we are most. Also, we have a very big ESL department, and so we're pretty prominent there, but we just do it as a request.
same here. Faculty can request a basic library orientation where we, you know, set up a Zoom and students show up and we go over how to use the database, or if it's an assignment specific request, then we can go over the assignment and how to tackle it. But we also offer the embedded librarian service, and faculty would do that by requesting the embedding through our IT help desk. And then we're actually implanted into the class, embedded into the class. And if the instructor wants us to do something assignment specific, then we do that with the class, and we can actually break out and meet with the class separately if we would like. We handle that. And it's been quite useful, you know, to actually be there and help faculty, you know, get through their research projects.
And I would say for myself, I definitely with the College of Education and now the Department of History. And, you know, a lot of it is based on their requests on particular courses. So if there's one for their research methods class, I'll make a video for that. And, you know, it's really going through the process of what they need and how I can help with that. So that's really, I'm leading that with those video modules and those tutorials. And I also, from MediaSite, I can embed that into Blackboard because we use Blackboard here at Texas Tech. So I'm able to do that. And people ask me a lot about, well, how about counts? Because, you know, we need those for our annual review. You know, how am I seeing how many students have actually looked at this video? So at MediaSite, I can see at the bottom how many people have viewed that particular video. So that helps with my data as well for my end of the year review.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to put out one last call for questions in the chat as we're nearing the top of the hour. And thank you to all the attendees for the really interesting and deep conversation in the chat. That's been really fun to watch. One last question I have, and I suspect it will be a quick answer. Theresa, are librarians required to attend tea times?
No, this is just kind of a fun social time. We try to vary the time of day and the day of the week that we offer them monthly. We've had no trouble getting volunteers to host them, and that would be just kind of come up with a topic and kind of lead the discussion or get the discussion started. But nothing's required, and people kind of come and go as they can.
Great. Well, I think we're winding down a bit. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Feel free, everyone, to save it, and I can pass questions along to the panelists. I'm going to stop the recording. And really, thank you, everyone, for attending. I'm not going to stop the chat just yet because I see things. And yes, panelists, please hang on for about 5 minutes.